So, chaos, of course, on both sides of the channel continues this morning after strikes in France led to those Eurostar services to be cancelled. There were huge delays at ferry terminals. And, of course, we've seen the situation with Jonathan Swain, haven't we, in Calais this morning. He's describing the fact that all those lorries stranded or, waiting to come back to Britain.
Absolutely.
And yet migrants are opening up the doors and smuggling themselves.
Even while we're on air, while we're watching, while the cameras are rolling in broad daylight. Absolutely amazing. Well, look, Richard Gaisford is on the other side of the problem. He's in Dover. And, Richard, we know that checks have been stepped up there and that the services have started being resumed, but there are still lots of problems, aren't they?
Yes, and what we're seeing here this morning, Kate, is the efforts to find migrants that may have hidden away on those lorries that have been holed up in France for up to a day, just sat there, allowing the migrants to get on board. Take a look behind me here at the port of Dover. You can see these two vehicle sheds. This is where border staff are going underneath the lorries. They've got mirrors and torches. They're pulling lorries aside. They're looking for anyone that might be hiding actually under the lorry or any spaces in and around the lorry. Just to the right of that shed, what you might well then see, if we can come back to that live picture, is a lorry going past a yellow fin. And that fin is a scanning device, and that is looking for any hot spots, we understand, within the back of that lorry, just to see if any human beings are hiding in the trailer where they shouldn't be. Now, the Home Office Minister James Brokenshire has said more resources are being ploughed into Dover to deal with the situation in France. We've seen the pictures from Calais this morning. It is quite frightening, the efforts that these migrants are going to get in. The situation in Calais yesterday means big delays here at the port, and overnight the M20 has been turned into something of a car park. This is Operation Stack in full effect. Lorries parked up for hours and hours, slowly crawling down the motorway, coming down here to Dover. The port is running, the trains are running, but it is slow going.
Richard, thanks very much. Well, let's talk to Tony Smith, who is the former head of the UK Border Force. Good morning to you. These pictures are astonishing, aren't they? You have lorry drivers, some of them having to sort of ask migrants to get out of their vehicles, seemingly powerless to stop these poor souls trying to find their way over to the UK, and then the police officers over in Calais not seeming to be terribly active. What's going on?
Well, that's the point, of course. This is France, and law and order in France and in and around the port of Calais is the responsibility of the French police. And so there's only a limited amount that we can do in Calais. We have a small zone there, which is the British control zone. We have powers to search vehicles, to stop people boarding, and we have our passport checks. But ultimately, law and order in and around the port is the responsibility of the French police, and we would hope that they're going to do something about it.
But have you talked to them about it? Have you said, why aren't you doing this? Why are cameras rolling in broad daylight, migrants jumping on lorries in front of police, they're not doing anything? Have you had that conversation, and what have they said? Well,
I understand conversations are being had between our authorities and the French authorities and the French police, and the French police have promised to step up their activity and bring more French police and riot police into the area to deal with that problem. But essentially, this is for them to deal with. What we're doing in the Border Force is to ensure we have sufficient resources in Calais and also, as your report just showed, in Dover, to conduct these searches, because people are very, there's a lot of ingenuity about deep concealment. You can see people trying to climb right into the fabric of these vehicles, and it's very dangerous as well.
And just to explain, Rich was just mentioning that yellow fin that we can see just on the edge of shot there. And that, what does that do? That sort of is like an X-ray, is it?
Yeah, there's a lot of technology around, actually, to search vehicles, and without getting too technical about it, there are capabilities, sort of heat-seeking capability. There's things that can detect movements, and we use those not just in Dover but also in Calais, and so do the French. There's a lot of technology there, and we also have our dog teams, which actually are probably the most effective of all in terms of searching vehicles just on the burst side. So there are a lot of measures in place, but it's difficult to stop everybody.
Can I just ask about the lorry drivers themselves? Because I think, as drivers, we wonder why it isn't possible simply to lock your lorry so that people can't make it inside. Is that too simplistic? Is there something that prevents that happening?
Well, there's different types of vehicles. There's soft-sided vehicles, there's trailers, there's trucks, you know, there's seals on these things. You know, drivers are legally obliged to check their vehicles as they move through. But as they've told you, I mean, this is extremely difficult for them because they're backed up in traffic. You've got marauding gangs of people wandering around with bolt cutters climbing into the back.
Do you get a bit scared? A bit scared of it, because I wouldn't blame them. You know, you're sitting there stationary with a gang of people with bolt cutters. Perhaps they're fearful of confrontation.
Well, indeed, and I mean it is very difficult, not just for the lorry drivers, but also for tourists and travellers. You know, we've had instances of people climbing into boots of private cars, etc. So it is really important that people remain alert if they're travelling across through that route.
The pictures are just astonishing.
Yeah.
Tony Smith, thank you very much indeed, former head of the UK Border Force.
Now, coming up, the woman who credits hypnotherapy with helping her conceive after she suffered 5 miscarriages. And this is the result. We're meeting Leah Elliott and gorgeous little newborn baby Joseph in a few minutes.